What's up everybody, welcome back to our Kerbal Space Program RP-1 Career Let's Play. I'm your host Calvin Maclure and this is episode 2 of our series. Last episode we got the basics out of the way, had several successful launches of our Silver Brant series of sounding rockets, reached the Kármán line, broke a few speed and altitude records, got some funds, got some science and got things underway. More importantly, we got underway with our spaceplane journey. We got the first few tech nodes unlocked, research, added a few upgrade points to the spaceplane hangar and the R&D center. We built our first spaceplane prototype, the XSP-2A. This is the plane we're going to attempt to break the sound barrier with for the first time, if all goes well. Obviously, with early engine tech, one of the main concerns is always reliability, whether the engine will light or not, whether it will last for the full length of its design burn time, which is always a great source of concern early on in career. But we begin this episode not with a flight, but rather with the designing of what will be the 2A's successor, the XSP-3 Silver Arrow. Well, we're not going to be able to unlock the engine that we're going to use for our X-15 spaceplane once we get to that point, since we still have a little ways to go before we unlock all of the needed tech nodes. In particular, I'm thinking of the spaceplane wings, the X-15 cockpit, both of which we will need those Mach 5 and faster flights. I nevertheless knew that we could somewhat bridge the gap between our current tech and future tech capabilities with some clever designing. How far exactly can we go with our current tech remains to be seen. We'll have to proceed with some amount of caution so that we don't needlessly kill any crew or destroy any of our tech. So I began to do some research to see what exactly existed out there or had been drawn up in real life. And when I was reading up on the proposed X-15 designs, when NACA at the time was receiving bids from different contractors, they had 4 different contractors that they were receiving design proposals from, North American Aviation ultimately being the victor. I came upon one of these concepts, which is called the Bell D-171. It used a 3-engine configuration and, as you can tell, has a fairly X-15-ish configuration in terms of its appearance and the shape of the fuselage. The most basic explanation for this is really simply physics. You don't always have that many ways of tackling the same issue at times. So I thought this could make for an interesting design idea. There were actually essentially 2 major X-15 configurations of sorts, one with the quote-unquote small engine and the other with the quote-unquote big engine. That small engine was essentially a pair of XLR-11 engines, the same that was used on the X1 series, put together from spare parts. Those early flights of the X-15 with the small engine pushed the spaceplane to a respectable value of Mach 2.4, 2.5, and these flights were used to validate the basics of the design with Scott Crossfield at the helm. Later came the big engine, the XLR-99. Compared to the combined 16,000 pounds of thrust from the 2 XLR-11s, the 99 produced an impressive 57,000 pounds of thrust. That was the engine that would propel the X-15 to the incredible speeds and heights it would eventually reach. So I thought of actually doing that small engine version of the X-15 in order to succeed our -2A in this playthrough. I'm trying to be smart about the way we go about this. One of the things you have to really be careful, especially early on, is reusing fuel tank shapes and the like as much as you can in order to reduce tooling costs. So I thought of actually doing that small engine version to succeed our XSP-2A One of the reasons, honestly, just being somewhat because I like the way it looks. I don't know why exactly, but I've always kind of fancied the look of those two engines in the back like that. I don't know why I like it, I just do. But I also know that where we're ultimately going to end up is going to be more or less an X15. One of the most important things that you have to be mindful of is keeping your tooling at a minimum. It reduces the cost of building new designs. It reduces the time or turnaround time for launching them. So the more you can have common components in between builds, the better it is. So that made a lot of sense in terms of having basically one design for the X15, and then you just swap out the two XLR11s for what would be the big engine later on. But then I thought to myself, no, we can do better. We can have a bit of fun with this. So I took inspiration from the D171 and its 3-engine configuration. So starting from our XSP-2A platform, that's what I did. With its 3 engines producing 3 times the thrust of the -2A, we should be able to do some pretty impressive stuff. How much, we'll just have to wait and see until we can take it out for a spin. But the good thing about going this route is we can produce a fairly aggressive improvement on the -2A just by combining the engine that we're already using on that variant without having to do any upgrades whatsoever to the power plant. So we were just here getting ready for our maiden flight of the XSP-2A, and I was having some issues with the crew training. I thought something was wrong, I wasn't sure, so I turned it off. Turns out it was just me being a complete idiot and not realizing that I had done proficiency training but not mission. But here we are, finally, flight 1. Initially everything was going quite well, the burn was good, the engine was good, we were picking up speed. I wouldn't say no time, but in a fairly short amount of time we were able to effectively reach and break the sound barrier. I took a bit of a nosedive just to be sure that we were going to make it in time. I had no idea how long the engine was going to last. So I didn't want to take any chances. The main objective was to cross that sound barrier and get that crude sound barrier contract. Once we got that out of the way, at this point it was just, let's burn the engine to depletion. Let's see how far and how fast we can go. Again, this was not just the first attempt at breaking the sound barrier, but this was also the first flight. So this was the first opportunity we had to see what this plane could actually do, what its top speed with this engine was capable of. Incidentally, this was also my first time ever at using the air launch system, which is new to career or fairly recent, so I had never really done anything with that before. I didn't take the time to do any kind of quick maths, which I should have in hindsight, because I ended up putting ourselves way too far. I figured this plane could do some good amount of gliding. I didn't realize just how far off we really had to go. And I'm toggling in between back and forth the map view and trying to get some reading for our downrange distance to Kennedy. And bit by bit it's starting to sink in that we're just not going to be able to make it. We don't have the altitude, we don't have the speed, we will not have the range to make it. So here you see me looking at the map view to try and get a visual reference point for how far we actually are, and if we're actually even heading in the right direction, which at least we had that down. So what this basically means is we'll have to prepare for a water ditch. The tactic basically is bleed off as much speed as you possibly can. So you'll see me basically trying to do this by lowering the landing gear to see if that has any kind of effect, and I didn't notice that it did. So I started doing a bunch of hard left and right yaws, which had a pretty good amount of effect. What I was basically trying to do at this point is keep it flying, pitch up whenever necessary, and just try to maintain as much lift as I can until finally the plane would just no longer keep itself up in the air. And hopefully that will have reduced our speed as much as we possibly can. And there you go. Done. Perfect water landing. Nothing's broken on the aircraft, which is great. More than that, the pilot has survived. So we're in really good shape. Now we'll be able to recover this plane and really quickly turn it around and reuse it, fly it again. So all in all, a pretty good flight. We got the record we were after. We were able to confirm the plane's flying characteristics. Then it's got some experience, got a nice ribbon. We got some science. Looking in at the next contract that we could possibly go for, I know for sure we'll be able to hit the 15-kilometer mark with this plane in its current configuration without a problem. It's definitely got the speed. It'll have the climb rate without an issue. Looking at the R&D, I'm looking to see what's next. That engine right there is the one we're going to want to go for our X15 variant once we get to that point. So we're going to start researching that as soon as we possibly can. Right now what we're working on is we'll upgrade our facilities a bit to try and maximize the speed at which we can research stuff and build our planes and turn them around. Obviously, since we're taking the spaceplane route rather than doing sounding rockets, we're going to be dumping points, for now at least, in the spaceplane hangar, not the VAB. And just going back in to see the contracts, I know that 600 meters per second we're not going to do, I doubt it. We can definitely maybe do that one here. I think we could definitely do that. We can hit that 320 meters per second mark and then continue to climb and hit that 15 kilometers. So that would basically be a two-step kind of flight. So we'd hit the minimum altitude mark, get the speed, and then continue to climb if the engine lasts long enough. So our objective for Flight 2, again, is to try and obviously burn to depletion, but the goal is to meet those two contracts. Our main goal is going to be altitude at this point. We're going to try and hit that 15-kilometer mark, which again, I don't think is going to be a problem. And if we can hit that, we're going to keep climbing. I want to see just how far we can take this thing. Everything was going really well. Everything was going quite smoothly. The engine was burning quite nice, as you can see it here. And then all of a sudden that happened. I omitted to replace the engine in between flights. I wasn't exactly sure if that was necessary or not. So what you saw there happen is that engine burning well past its intended burn time, and that's why that happened. We had a pretty catastrophic failure. Fortunately, nothing serious happened to the plane. It's still very flyable. And we're really close to Kennedy, so all we have to do at this point is slowly glide down, bleed some speed off. What you're going to see me do here is basically perform a series of left and right banks as we slowly decrease our altitude and also keep our speed within a manageable landing value. This plane doesn't have any air brakes, deliberately done so just to minimize build times and weight and cost, but we can very easily build off or bleed off speed just by performing these S-turns. At this point, I felt pretty good about the speed and altitude we were at and how far we were from the landing strip. So it was really just a question of lining up center line and bringing it home. Everything was pretty much textbooked about the touchdown, about the landing, except for the fact that the drag chute didn't fully deploy. So I was a little confused as to why that was the case. But it doesn't matter. We made it, we're home, everyone's safe, plane's in good shape. Yeah, we're gonna need to get that fixed. That is it for episode 2. I hope you had a good time. I enjoyed making this. Hope you'll join me for the next episode. There's still a lot to do. I'll catch you on the next flight.